Hey Caleb, and anyone else at UpperRoom that might be wanting to control the lights. This is just a quick little video explaining my process of diagnosing what was going on today, and me talking a little bit about what I think a logical order to check on and troubleshoot lights is if they're not working for some reason. So the first thing I did was I just noticed that the wireless DMX is indeed on. This green light means it's sending out signal. I think just make sure it's on. If you want, you can power cycle it just to make sure it's on. So that'll just do that all on its own. It's really good and smart, and I've never had one break, so it's assumed that it's working. Then I'll just make sure it's getting the signal. So plugged in, coming out the console. And then in the meantime, I'll go ahead and just power cycle the console. So there's a little power switch in the back here. Let's turn it off. Wait a second or two, turn it back on. It'll load. And then the first thing you do when the console turns on, we can pretend all these faders are already down. You just hit this button up here. This console controls 192 channels. We only use the first 8. So, excuse me, you want to have this one selected. It tells it channels 1 through 8 instead of like 9 through 16 or something like that. So you have number 1 selected. Now it's sending out signal to these channels based on how much the faders are up. Also, you have your presets here, but we're going to pretend that none of this is working. So, oh man, I'm turning up the faders and nothing's coming on. Really weird. We know that the console is set up correctly. It's got signal out to the wireless DMX, and we have number 1 selected, and nothing's happening. Oh no. So we're going to assume that the console is working correctly, because if it wasn't, then it'd be a much bigger problem, and not that we want to ignore that possibility, but we want to assume it's something easier from the get-go. So I start at the closest point of failure, which is the dimmer pack. I looked up there, and there's a little power switch that I saw is in the on position. So I know that it, at least the dimmer pack is turned on, and it still looks like it's plugged in correctly with the DMX in. So I assume that that's correct. Now, this might be the case, but if any of these things are different than what I'm saying, it's set up correctly right now, the whole system. So if anything's different than what I'm saying, then probably investigate that spot. So DMX in is plugged in good, but another thing we can do is come around to the front and try to get a view of the actual dimmer pack itself. See, there's these little green LEDs on the screen on the front of it. Those are on right now because it is receiving power and it is working, but when I came here it wasn't. So if they're off, assume that it's not plugged in to power from its source, like the wall, or it's actually plugged into the power strip behind the TV. So that's where I would investigate next. So when I got here, those LEDs on the screen were off, so I assume, oh, it must not be getting power from the wall. So we come back here behind the TV, and when I got here, the strip was turned off. So the switch was set to the off position instead of the reset position. I don't know what may have tripped it, but to make it work, it needs to wind up being in the reset position. So I turned it on, the LEDs came on the dimmer pack, and then the cans had signal and power and were accessible, or functional. So then the next issue after we got that fixed, so that's working fine now, was the LED bars. None of them would turn on. So I assume it's either a power issue or a signal issue, because what are the odds that all of the LED bars are going to break all at the same time? Probably not. So I come down here, make sure everything's turned on. I just turn on the power conditioner down here just in case, even though currently the plug in the front of the power conditioner is not affected by the power switch on the power conditioner. So if you turn off the power conditioner and your lights are still plugged into here, which I'm going to move it before I leave so they shouldn't be, they'll still be on. So I just noticed that. So I was just making sure everything was turned on and receiving power from the wall, and then I saw this was unplugged right here. See if I can get it right there. This is the wireless DMX for the LED bars. It wasn't getting power, and therefore the bars weren't getting signal. So an easy way to tell, there's an LED in here that's, if it has power but no signal, it's red. If it has power and signal, it turns on green. If it's unplugged, it doesn't do anything. And your bars aren't going to do anything because they have no default setting for when they don't have signal. So I just plugged in this wireless DMX down here. If I can get it with one hand. Boom. So you see that it blinked red for a second, now it's blinking green to show you it has signal. Earlier when I came over here, I made sure that I had some channels of the LED bars turned on, so I wouldn't have to go back and forth, and I would immediately know if it was fixed. But you know, it has green signal to show it has power and stuff. Excuse me, and I assume that the LED bar has power because I turned on the power conditioner, and that should be the main issue. So then final thing is I'll walk back here back to the console, turn on some signal for the LED bars, and then just make sure they come on. And that should be it. Should be pretty simple. So there we go. Now we have LED bars. I'm just turning up all the first 4 faders to turn on all the LEDs. There's a can light, there's a can light, there's a can light, and then the 8th one is empty. So that's just basically what I'll do to troubleshoot and what I did to fix this problem. Just make sure you power cycle your console, check that you have power from the wall to your lights and dimmer pack, and then make sure signal is good all the way through. So that first fixture, that first bar on stage, all the way stage right, down stage right, is where signal starts. So make sure that that has signal, and then that should be about it. It's a pretty simple setup, and this should be helpful.